This video shows how to perform a suspension job on a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer. We'll install Duralast Loaded Strut assemblies in the front and shocks in the rear. Now you can do this job at home with hand tools. You'll need a torque wrench. You can get that from AutoZone through Loan-A-Tool, an 18mm deep 3/8 socket, a 15mm deep 3/8 socket, a 24mm 1/2" socket, a 19mm 1/2" socket, a 10mm deep 3/8 socket, a block of wood to help with the jack, a screwdriver, a 1/2" breaker bar, 3/8 extension, 1/2" ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, 18mm combo wrench, 15mm combo wrench, a mallet, a straight punch, a flat punch for separation, and some safety gloves and goggles. You'll also need a good hydraulic jack, some jack stands, and wheel chocks. Make sure the car is in park with the parking brake on before starting. To get started, break the lug nuts on the wheel. Jack up the vehicle and set it securely on a jack stand. Loosen and remove the lug nuts and the wheel. Working from the top, you'll need to remove the air filter cover. Just use a simple screwdriver to remove the 3 screws. And move this air filter hose out of the way. Use an 18mm socket with an extension to loosen and remove the 2 top nuts on the strut assembly. Back in the wheel well, remove the 2 bolts holding the brake line in place with a 10mm socket. Pop open the wheel speed sensor with a screwdriver and take the sensor off the assembly. Use a 15mm wrench and a 15mm deep socket to remove the upper control arm ball joint and nut. Separate the upper control arm from the spindle. Break and remove the top bolt from the strut assembly mounting bracket with an 18mm, and break and remove the lower mounting bracket nut with a 24mm. You may need a mallet to help pull the assembly and mounting bracket off the stud. Knock out the bolt from the bracket. You can use some wood for stability if you need to. Use a punch or separator to open the bracket enough to get the strut out. This may need a little wiggling and hammering. Take the new assembly and slide it into the bracket. Leave the separator inside while you do this. Remove the separator. Hammer the bolt back into the bracket. Install the new strut with the strut arm bracket attached. Slide the bottom of the bracket back onto the lower control arm stud. Under the hood, install the 2 top strut mounting nuts. It's easier to tighten these with an extension. Attach the hose, install the air filter, and reinstall the cover. Install the bottom nut on the lower control arm stud. Install the nut on the bracket bolt clamping onto the strut assembly. Reattach the knuckle to the upper control arm. Then install the upper control arm bolt and nut and tighten. Install the clip for the wheel speed sensor. Install the bolts connecting the brake line to the assembly. Put the wheel back on and tighten the lug nuts. Lower the car until the wheel is touching, tighten the lug nuts to torque, and lower it the rest of the way. Repeat on the other side, and then you're ready to move to the rear. For the rear, follow the same safety steps as the front, and remove the wheel. Use a jack to support the rear end. Loosen and remove the lower bolt and nut with an 18mm socket. You may need a little help from your mallet here. Still using that 18mm, loosen and remove the top bolt and nut. Remove the old shock. Install the new shock. Install the top bolt and finger tighten the nut. Install the bottom bolt. You may need to use a jack or compress the shock to make sure it lines up for the bolt to go in. Tighten the top nut on the top bolt and tighten the bottom bolt and nut. Remove the jack, install the wheel, repeat this on the other side, and you're done. We recommend taking your car on a test drive, getting an alignment check, and enjoying your new suspension.